The hum of the private jet engines was a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. I stood in the cavernous hangar, the cool, recycled air doing little to chill the simmering rage that had been my constant companion for 5 long years. On the massive digital screen before me, Marcus thrashed. His face, usually a mask of smug superiority, was contorted in a rictus of fury and disbelief. He was at JFK, gesticulating wildly at an impassive airline attendant, his voice a silent movie of impotent rage. "Did you make sure his card was declined for all alternate flights, too?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. Zara, my assistant, a woman whose loyalty was as sharp as her intellect, gave a curt nod. "Yes, Miss Blackwood, as requested. Every major carrier and even the smaller charters. His corporate cards are also experiencing technical difficulties." A ghost of a smile played on her lips. A notification pinged on my phone. I glanced down. Anniversary, Flight 722 crash. The words leapt out, stark and brutal. My breath hitched. The hangar, a moment ago a symbol of my power, suddenly felt like a cage. The scent of jet fuel, usually invigorating, now choked me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird desperate for escape. The sterile white walls seemed to close in, the floor tilted beneath my feet. No, not now, not again. I could feel the cold, the crushing pressure, the screams. Her screams, my screams. The acrid taste of salt water filled my mouth. Darkness, silence. "Miss Blackwood?" Zara's voice, laced with concern, pulled me back from the abyss. I forced a deep breath, then another. The edges of the hangar sharpened back into focus. The panic receded, leaving behind the familiar dull ache of memory. I straightened, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle in my tailored suit. "Let him feel what it's like to be stranded and helpless," I said, my voice now laced with a chilling resolve. "I've been planning this for 5 years since my rebirth." 5 years. 5 years of meticulous planning, of rebuilding myself, of nursing this cold, hard knot of vengeance in my chest. Marcus thought he'd won. He thought he'd gotten away with it. He had no idea the depths of the hell I was about to unleash upon him. This was more than just a canceled flight. This was a reckoning. What happened to me? Why this elaborate, cruel ballet of revenge? The answers were tangled in a web of family secrets, betrayal, and a past life that still haunted my waking hours and stalked my dreams. My gaze drifted to a small, framed photo on a nearby console. It was from a Christmas past, a relic of my first life. There I was, younger, softer, flanked by my parents, their faces alight with love. And there, standing just a little too close, a little too proprietary, was Marcus. His arm was slung around my shoulder, a smile plastered on his face that, in retrospect, looked more like a predatory grin. The photo was a lie, a carefully constructed facade hiding a rotten core. He had taken everything from me once. This time, I would take everything from him, and I would enjoy every single moment of it. The irony was he'd never see it coming. Not from me. Not from the Mia he thought he knew, the Mia he thought he'd destroyed. The first sensation was light, a searing, unwelcome intrusion behind my eyelids. Then came the pain, a dull, throbbing symphony that seemed to emanate from every cell in my body. I tried to move, but my limbs were heavy, unresponsive. A groan escaped my lips, dry and raspy. "She's waking up, doctor! She's waking up!" A woman's voice, urgent and surprised. My eyelids fluttered open, then slammed shut against the harsh fluorescent glare. I tried again, blinking until the sterile white of a hospital room swam into focus. A face loomed over me, a kind, middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform. "Mia, can you hear me, dear?" Mia, yes, that was my name. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. My mind was a fog, a jumble of fragmented images and sensations. The last thing I remembered. The plane, the screaming, the cold, dark water. What happened? I managed, my voice barely a whisper. A doctor, a man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, stepped forward. "Mia, you've been in a coma for 5 years." 5 years? The words didn't register. It couldn't be. I remembered yesterday. I remembered dying. There was a plane crash. He continued, his voice soft. Flight 722. It went down in the Atlantic. You were the sole survivor, Mia. Flight 722. The name sent a fresh wave of terror through me. The images came flooding back, sharp and vivid. The sudden, violent lurch. The oxygen masks deploying. The terrified faces of the other passengers. The impact. The icy water engulfing me. The crushing darkness. I had died. I knew I had died. I remembered the fading light, the strange sense of peace that had settled over me in those final moments. And yet, here I was. Alive. It's a miracle, Mia, the doctor said, his voice filled with awe. Your recovery, it's nothing short of miraculous. You had extensive injuries, we weren't sure, but you fought hard. As the days turned into weeks, the fog in my mind began to clear. The doctors explained the extent of my injuries: multiple fractures, internal damage, a severe head trauma that had kept me locked in a silent world for half a decade. But with the returning clarity came a horrifying realization. This wasn't just a miraculous recovery. This was a second chance, a do-over. I had lived this life before, up until the crash. And in that life, I had not survived. This was a parallel timeline, a bizarre, impossible twist of fate. Then came another blow, a cruel twist of the knife in an already gaping wound. My parents, they were gone. A car accident, they said. 2 years into my coma, 2 years I had lain there, oblivious, while the world moved on without me. The grief was a raw, physical ache, a hollow emptiness that threatened to consume me. I was alone, and I was, to my utter shock, a billionaire. My parents' tech company, Blackwood Industries, a giant in the world of software and innovation, was now mine. All of it. And then I heard his name. Marcus, my cousin, my trusted confidant, my betrayer. He had been running the company in my absence, and they told me, stepping up in the family's time of need. But I knew Marcus. I knew his ambition, his ruthlessness, the greed that lurked beneath his charming facade. He had been expecting me to die. He had been counting on it. He had been poised to inherit everything. A cold fury, sharper and more potent than any I had ever known, began to smolder within me. I had been given a second chance, yes, but it wasn't just a chance to live. It was a chance for revenge. I knew what was coming. I had lived the next 5 years of this life already, up to that fateful flight. I knew Marcus's moves, his plans, his deceptions, and this time, I would be ready. This time, Mia Blackwood was not going to be a victim. She was going to be the hunter. My first life. It seems like a dream now, a distant, faded photograph. I was Mia Blackwood, struggling graphic designer. Talented, yes, but overshadowed. I worked at Blackwood Industries, my parents' company, but I was just another cog in the machine, trying to prove myself, trying to make them proud. My designs were good, innovative even, but I lacked the cutthroat ambition, the killer instinct that thrived in the corporate world. Marcus, though. Marcus had it in spades. He was my cousin, my confidant, the brother I never had. Or so I thought. We grew up together, shared secrets, dreams. I trusted him implicitly. He was charming, charismatic, and everyone loved him. He worked alongside my parents, learning the ropes, positioning himself as the heir apparent. I never suspected a thing. How could I? He was family. I remember that day at the airport like it was yesterday. It was a crisp autumn morning. I had a first-class ticket to London, a crucial client meeting. This was my chance, my opportunity to finally step out of the shadows to prove my worth. I was buzzing with a mixture of nerves and excitement. Then Marcus appeared, his face a mask of feigned panic. Mia, thank God I found you. I need a huge favor, massive. What is it, Marcus? I asked, my brow furrowing with concern. There's an urgent business meeting in New York. Just came up. Vital. I have to be there, but my flight, it's overbooked. I can't get a seat. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, the picture of distress. Your flight, it's the only one that gets me there in time. He wanted my seat, my first-class ticket, my chance. But Marcus, this London meeting, I began, a knot of disappointment tightening in my chest. I know, cuz, and I'm so sorry, but this is It's critical for the company, for Dad and Mom. He always knew how to play me, how to appeal to my loyalty, my desire to please. There's another flight to London in a few hours, flight 722. You can still make your meeting, it'll be tight, but you can do it. Please, Mia. For me? For the family? How could I refuse? He was Marcus, my beloved cousin. So I did it. I gave him my ticket. I switched to flight 722, the ill-fated flight 722. There was no urgent meeting in New York. I found that out later in this new life, piecing together the fragments of his betrayal. He wanted to meet with my parents, yes, but not for some critical business deal. He wanted to convince them to remove me from the company. He saw me as a threat, a rival. He wanted it all for himself. My seat on that plane was just a means to an end, a way to get me out of the picture permanently. The crash. Even now, the memory makes my blood run cold. The sudden, sickening drop, the screams, the metallic tang of fear in the air, the lights flickering then dying, plunging us into a terrifying, chaotic darkness, the desperate scramble for life jackets, the futile prayers. The impact was like a sledgehammer, a brutal, bone-jarring collision that ripped the plane apart. I remember the icy water, a shocking, brutal embrace, the screams dissolving into gurgles, the crushing weight of the ocean, the burning in my lungs, and then nothing. Just a cold, dark, silent void. In that original timeline, that was it. The end of Mia Blackwood. But here, in this strange new reality, I survived. Or rather, my body did. I slipped into a coma, a 5-year slumber while the world continued to turn. My parents, they were devastated, of course. But even in their grief, a seed of suspicion began to take root. Marcus's behavior after the crash, it was off. Too eager to take control, too quick to dismiss their concerns. They started asking questions, quietly at first, then with more urgency. They began to investigate him. They were getting close, too close. And then, the car accident. Convenient, wasn't it? Now I see it all with horrifying clarity. Marcus didn't just want my seat on that plane. He wanted my life. He wanted my inheritance. He wanted everything, and he was willing to do anything to get it. He was a monster, hiding in plain sight, cloaked in the guise of a loving cousin. And I, in my naivety, in my blind trust, had walked right into his trap. Twice. But there wouldn't be a third time. The hospital room became my world. White walls, beeping machines, the constant hum of hushed conversations. Recovery was a slow, arduous journey. Physical therapy sessions pushed my body to its limits, each movement a painful reminder of the trauma it had endured. My muscles, atrophied from 5 years of disuse, screamed in protest. But I pushed through, fueled by a burning resolve that surprised even myself. The news of my parents' death hit me like a physical blow. 2 years into my coma, they were gone. A car accident, the official report said. Brake failure, tragic, unforeseen. But the timing, it was too convenient. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Marcus, could he? The thought was too monstrous to contemplate, yet it clung to me like a shroud. The first time I saw him after waking up, it was a carefully orchestrated performance. I was propped up in bed, pale and frail, the picture of a broken survivor. He walked in, his face a carefully constructed mask of concern and relief. But his eyes betrayed him. I saw it just for a flicker of a second, a flash of shock, of barely concealed disappointment. He had been so close to having it all, and then I had woken up. The ghost had returned to reclaim her throne. Mia, oh, thank God you're awake. He rushed to my bedside, his voice oozing false sincerity. He clasped my hand, his touch sending a shiver of revulsion down my spine. I played my part, weak, confused, my memory hazy. I feigned ignorance about business, about the company, about everything. I let him believe I was no threat, just a fragile, broken girl who needed his help. Don't you worry about a thing, cuz, he said, patting my hand. I've been taking care of everything. The company is in good hands. You just focus on getting better. I'll continue to help out, for as long as you need me." His arrogance was almost laughable. He thought I was a fool. He thought he could manipulate me, control me, just like before. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The Maya who had trusted him, who had loved him, was dead. She had died in the icy waters of the Atlantic. The woman who had taken her place was someone else entirely. Someone forged in the fires of betrayal and loss. Someone who knew his every move, his every thought. While I continued my charade of weakness, I began to dig. Secretly, meticulously. Nights were spent poring over company reports, financial statements, emails. As my mind, sharper than ever, pieced together the puzzle of Marcus's treachery. He had been systematically siphoning funds, transferring assets, creating a labyrinth of shell corporations. He was weeks, perhaps days, away from gaining complete, irreversible control of Blackwood Industries, my parents' legacy, my legacy. The rage that had been simmering within me now roared to life. He had tried to kill me. He had, I was increasingly certain, killed my parents. He had tried to steal everything that was rightfully mine. He would not succeed. I made a decision then, lying in that sterile hospital bed. I would take it all back. Every penny, every share, every last shred of power. But I wouldn't be rash. I wouldn't be impulsive. I would play the long game. I would let him think he was winning. I would let him dig his own grave. And when the time was right, I would bury him in it. Revenge, I decided, was a dish best served cold. And I was a patient woman. After all, I had all the time in the world, or rather, all the time in this second world, 1 year. It had been 1 year since I'd woken from that 5-year nightmare. A year of relearning to walk, to talk, to live. A year of pretending to be the fragile, broken Mia, while the real Mia, the one forged in fire and ice, plotted and planned. The first step was to build my army. I couldn't do this alone. I needed allies, people I could trust, people with skills I lacked. Zara was the first, a former cybersecurity specialist with a razor-sharp mind and a healthy disdain for corporate greed. She'd been wrongfully dismissed from a rival tech firm, framed by an executive with a vendetta. She was hungry for justice, and she saw in me a kindred spirit. She became my eyes and ears, my digital ghost, slipping through firewalls and uncovering Marcus's secrets with an almost preternatural skill. Then came James Chen, a brilliant, ruthless lawyer with a reputation for taking on impossible cases and winning. He was expensive but worth every penny. He saw the potential for a landmark case, a corporate takedown of epic proportions. He also saw the fire in my eyes, the unwavering determination. He became my legal shield, my strategist, navigating the complex labyrinth of corporate law and preparing the groundwork for the storm to come. With Zara and James by my side, I began to weave my own web, slowly, patiently. I established a secret power base within Blackwood Industries, identifying employees loyal to my parents, those who chafed under Marcus's arrogant rule. I cultivated them, earned their trust, turned them into my informants, my agents of change. To Marcus, I was still the grateful, slightly dim-witted cousin, overwhelmed by the complexities of the business world. I'd attend meetings, nod vaguely at his pronouncements, ask naive questions that made him smirk with superiority. "Don't worry your pretty little head about it, Mia," he'd say, patting my arm condescendingly. "I've got it all under control." Little did he know, every night, Zara and I would meticulously undo his schemes. We'd reroute his embezzled funds, alert regulatory bodies to his more egregious violations through anonymous tips, and quietly sabotage his attempts to consolidate power. He was so confident, so sure of my incompetence, that he never saw the subtle shifts, the ground eroding beneath his feet. Zara's digging unearthed the true extent of his embezzlement. Millions, tens of millions, siphoned away over the years, hidden in a complex network of offshore accounts and shell companies. He was a thief, plain and simple, a parasite leeching off the company my parents had built with their blood, sweat, and tears. Then came the discovery that turned my cold rage into a white-hot inferno. Zara found it, buried deep in the deleted files of a disgraced mechanic who had worked for Marcus on the side. An email chain, heavily coded but unmistakable. Instructions for tampering with brake lines. My parents' car. It wasn't an accident. It was murder. The knowledge settled in my gut like a stone, cold and heavy. He hadn't just tried to kill me, he had killed them. My loving, unsuspecting parents. The grief, raw and fresh, threatened to overwhelm me. But I pushed it down, channeled it into a steely resolve. He would pay for everything. My plan began to take on a new dimension. It wasn't just about reclaiming my company anymore, it was about justice. It was about making him suffer, truly suffer. I started buying shares in Aurora Airlines, the airline that operated Flight 722. The airline that had, however inadvertently, been the instrument of my near demise. I used shell companies, of course, obscuring my identity, slowly, steadily acquiring a significant stake. Marcus would never connect it to me. He was too busy preening, too busy counting his stolen chickens. The first real test came at a quarterly board meeting. Marcus, in his infinite arrogance, decided it was time to publicly humiliate me, to demonstrate my unsuitability to ever lead Blackwood Industries. He presented a complex financial restructuring plan, riddled with jargon and deliberate obfuscations, designed to confuse and intimidate. He then turned to me, a smug, patronizing smile on his face. Mia, perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on this? Or is it a bit too technical for you? The boardroom, filled with his sycophants and a few remaining allies of my parents, fell silent. All eyes were on me. This was it. Time to show my hand, just a little. I smiled sweetly. Actually, Marcus, I said, my voice clear and confident, I do have a few observations. Your projected Q4 revenue figures, for instance, seem overly optimistic, given the current market volatility and the recent underperformance of our European division. And this debt refinancing proposal? It exposes us to considerable interest rate risk, doesn't it? Have you considered a more conservative approach? Perhaps a syndicated loan with a fixed-rate tranche? The silence in the boardroom was now stunned. Marcus's jaw literally dropped. His face, a moment ago so smug, was now a mask of disbelief. I continued, calmly and methodically, dismantling his proposal piece by piece, exposing its flaws, its hidden risks. I spoke with an authority, a business acumen, that no one in that room, least of all Marcus, had ever suspected I possessed. When I finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then, one of my parents' old allies, a grizzled veteran of the tech wars, began to clap. Slowly, hesitantly at first, then with more conviction. Others joined in. Even a few of Marcus's cronies, their faces a mixture of shock and grudging admiration, added their applause. Marcus just stared at me, his face pale, his eyes narrowed. He knew in that moment that the game had changed. The puppet had cut her strings, and she was coming for him. 2 years. 2 years since I'd thrown down the gauntlet at that board meeting. 2 years of a silent, undeclared war waged within the hallowed halls of Blackwood Industries. To the outside world, Marcus was still the man in charge, the acting CEO, but within the company, the tides were turning. I had been busy. With Zara's help, I'd systematically identified Marcus's key allies, the ones who propped up his reign of incompetence and corruption. One by one, they were replaced. Some were bought off, offered lucrative severance packages they couldn't refuse. Others were exposed, their own little schemes and indiscretions brought to light, forcing their resignations. They were replaced by people loyal to me, people who believed in my vision for the company, people who were tired of Marcus's self-serving agenda. My confidence grew with each small victory. I was no longer the timid, uncertain girl who had woken up in that hospital bed. I was Mia Blackwood, a force to be reckoned with. I immersed myself in the business, learning every facet, every nuance. I worked tirelessly, driven by a singular purpose. My business prowess, once hidden, now shone brightly. Around Marcus, however, I maintained the facade. I'd still feign confusion, ask for his guidance, allow him to believe he was still pulling the strings. His arrogance was his Achilles heel, and I exploited it mercilessly. He saw my growing competence as a fluke, a temporary aberration. He couldn't comprehend that the Mia he had once so easily manipulated was gone forever. Then came the Singapore trip, an important tech conference, a chance to network, to secure new partnerships. Marcus insisted I join him. "It'll be good for you, Mia," he said, his tone patronizing. "A chance to see how the real business world operates." I agreed, of course. I knew this was coming. It was all part of the pattern, the twisted repeat of history that seemed to define my second life. A few days before our departure, he approached me, his face a mask of practiced sincerity. "Mia, 'cause another huge favor. You know how important this conference is. I need to make a good impression, be at the top of my game. My flight? It's coach, and you know how I am. I need my space to prepare, to focus." He gestured vaguely. "Your ticket? It's first class, isn't it? Would you mind, terribly, if we swapped? Just this once?" Deja vu, it was almost comical. The same pathetic plea, the same flimsy excuse. He was so predictable, so utterly lacking in imagination. He really thought I was that same naive girl, so easily swayed by his manufactured charm. "Of course, Marcus," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Anything for the good of the company." I even managed a small, accommodating smile. History, it seemed, was indeed repeating itself. Or so he thought. He beamed, relieved. "You're a lifesaver, Mia. I knew I could count on you." He took my first-class ticket, a smug little smile playing on his lips. He probably thought he was so clever, so manipulative. The day of the flight arrived. Marcus, brimming with self-importance, boarded his first-class flight to Singapore. I supposedly was on a later flight in coach, but I never boarded that flight. Instead, I was in a sleek, private conference room at a discreet airport hotel, miles away from the chaos of JFK. Across the polished mahogany table sat the senior executives of Aurora Airlines. They looked a little nervous, a little intimidated. As they should. "Miss Blackwood," the CEO began, his voice a little shaky. "We've reviewed your offer. It's generous. Very generous." I smiled, a cold, predatory smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I believe in Aurora Airlines," I said smoothly. "I believe in its potential, and I'm prepared to invest heavily to ensure its success." The papers were signed, the deal was done. Through a complex network of shell companies and intermediaries, I now own 30% of Aurora Airlines, a significant controlling interest. Enough to make my voice heard, enough to start making changes. As I left the hotel, my phone buzzed. A message from Zara. "Marcus's flight is experiencing mechanical difficulties, indefinite delay. He's currently stranded in the first-class lounge, apparently making quite a scene." A small, satisfied smile touched my lips. My first act of revenge. Small, yes, petty perhaps, but oh, so satisfying. Let him stew, let him rage. Let him feel that familiar frustration, that helplessness of being at the mercy of an airline. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He had no idea who now pulled the strings at Aurora Airlines. This was just the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. 3 years. 3 years of meticulous planning, of silent maneuvering, of playing the fool while sharpening my knives. 3 years, and it was finally time. Time to take back what was mine. Time for Marcus to face the music. The emergency board meeting was called at my request. The room was tense, electric with anticipation. Marcus sat at the head of the table, a smug, confident smirk plastered on his face. He thought this was his moment, his chance to finally consolidate his power, to oust me for good. He had no idea he was walking into his own execution. I let him grandstand for a while, spewing his usual blend of arrogance and half-truths. He spoke of his vision for the company, of the progress made under his stewardship. He painted me as an unstable, emotional woman, unfit to lead, a liability to Blackwood Industries. When he finally finished, a self-satisfied glint in his eye, I rose. I was calm, composed, my voice steady. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my tone devoid of emotion. "A truly illuminating performance. However, I believe it's time for a reality check." I gestured to Zara, who stood silently by the projector. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of documents, emails, bank statements. Evidence. Irrefutable evidence of Marcus's embezzlement, his corporate espionage, his systematic looting of Blackwood Industries. The room erupted in gasps. Marcus's face went white, then a mottled shade of red. This is outrageous. These are fabrications, lies. Are they, Marcus? I asked, my voice like ice. Because I have a team of forensic accountants who would beg to differ, and I believe the SEC will be very interested in their findings. One by one, the board members, his supposed allies, turned their backs on him. They had seen the writing on the wall, they knew which way the wind was blowing. Their loyalty, it turned out, was easily bought. Or rather, easily reclaimed by its rightful owner. You can't do this, Marcus spluttered, his voice shaking with rage and disbelief. I won't let you. It's already done, Marcus, I said, my voice soft but firm. The board has voted, you're out, effective immediately. He stared at me, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and dawning comprehension. You bitch, you set me up after everything I did for you, for this family. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Everything you did to this family, you mean? You took my seat on a safe flight once, Marcus, and I nearly died. You orchestrated the events that led to my parents' deaths. History has a way of repeating itself, doesn't it? Only this time, you're the one going down. I formally reclaimed my position as CEO of Blackwood Industries, the company my parents had built, the company Marcus had tried to steal. Security guards discreetly positioned outside the boardroom entered and escorted a sputtering, protesting Marcus from the building. He threatened legal action, of course. He was still confident, still arrogant, still believing his hidden assets were safe, untouchable. He had no idea how thoroughly I had dismantled his house of cards. Oh, and Marcus? I called out as he was being dragged away. One more thing. Those offshore accounts, the shell corporations, they've all been frozen. The authorities have been notified. It seems your little nest egg has flown the coop. The look on his face. Pure, unadulterated horror. It was a masterpiece. He left the building a broken man, humiliated, defeated. But he still didn't know the full extent of my revenge. He thought this was the end. He had no idea it was just the beginning of his nightmare. He had played with fire, and now he was about to get burned. Severely. 4 years. 4 years since I had reclaimed my rightful place at the head of Blackwood Industries. 4 years of rebuilding, of restoring my parents' legacy, of transforming the company into something even greater than they had imagined. But amidst the success, the accolades, the quiet hum of a well-oiled machine, a dark shadow lingered. The plane crash. The nightmares still came, less frequently now, but just as vivid, just as terrifying. The cold, the screams, the crushing darkness. The trauma was a part of me, a scar that would never fully fade. And then there was the other, deeper wound. My parents. Their deaths. The official report, the brake failure, the tragic accident. I had never believed it, and now it was time to prove it. I hired a team of private investigators, the best in the business, discreet, relentless, with a knack for unearthing secrets buried deep beneath layers of deception. They dug into Marcus's past, his financials, his associates. They re-examined the evidence from my parents' crash, interviewed witnesses, chased down leads that had long gone cold. The investigation was a slow, painstaking process. Weeks turned into months. There were dead ends, false leads, moments of frustration when it seemed the truth would remain forever shrouded in Marcus's web of lies, but I didn't give up. I couldn't. I owed it to my parents. I owed it to myself. And then, the breakthrough. A disgruntled former employee of Marcus's, a mechanic with a gambling problem and a guilty conscience. He had been bought off, threatened into silence. But the investigators found him, persuaded him to talk. He had records, an old encrypted hard drive. And on that hard drive, the final damning piece of the puzzle. Detailed instructions from Marcus, schematics of my parents' car, payments, dates. It was all there, irrefutable proof. Marcus hadn't just been negligent. He had orchestrated their murders, cold-blooded, premeditated. The knowledge hit me with the force of a physical blow. The grief, the rage, the underscore-ching sense of betrayal, it all came flooding back, threatening to drown me. But this time, there was something else, too. A cold, hard certainty. Justice would be served. I arranged a meeting with Marcus, a private meeting, no lawyers, no witnesses, just me and him. He was a shadow of his former self, his arrogance replaced by a desperate, haunted look. The embezzlement charges were hanging over him, his assets frozen, his reputation in tatters. He was cornered, desperate. I laid the evidence on the table between us. The emails, the bank transfers, the mechanic's sworn affidavit. His face, already pale, turned ashen. He stared at the documents, his hands trembling. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "The brakes, they were just supposed to fail, a scare, enough to make them listen to me." "Listen to you?" I echoed, my voice dangerously soft. "Listen to you about what, Marcus? About how you were going to steal their company? About how you had already tried to get rid of me?" He broke then. The confession came tumbling out, a torrent of self-pity and twisted justifications. His jealousy of me, of my relationship with my parents, of my natural talent for business. His resentment, his greed, his insatiable ambition. He admitted to everything: the plane ticket swap, the embezzlement, the tampering with my parents' car, everything. When he was finished, a broken, pathetic figure, he looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I'll do anything, Mia, anything. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Just drop the murder investigation, please." I looked at him, this man who had destroyed my family, who had tried to destroy me. This shell of a human being, begging for mercy he didn't deserve. I leaned back in my chair, a thoughtful expression on my face. "Leave the country, Marcus," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Go somewhere far away. Somewhere no one knows you. Start over. Disappear." A flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. He thought I was letting him go. He thought he had gotten away with it. Again. He didn't know me at all. 5 years. 5 years since I had stepped out of the shadows and into the light, reclaiming what was mine. Blackwood Industries was thriving, a global powerhouse, a testament to my parents' vision and my own relentless drive. I had not only rebuilt it, I had transformed it. We were innovators, leaders, pioneers in a dozen different fields. My parents would have been proud. But there was another piece of the puzzle, another thread in the intricate tapestry of my revenge. Aurora Airlines, the airline that had been the unwitting instrument of my near-death experience. The airline that had in a strange, twisted way given me this second chance. My initial 30% stake had been just the beginning. Over the past few years, I had continued to acquire shares, quietly, steadily, through a network of shell companies and trusted intermediaries. And now the time was right. The final deal was signed in a quiet, understated ceremony. No fanfare, no press releases, just a transfer of shares, a shift in the balance of power. I now owned 51% of Aurora Airlines. Majority control, the airline was mine. My first act as the new owner was to implement a sweeping overhaul of safety protocols. New training programs, new maintenance schedules, new technologies. No expense was spared. Aurora Airlines would become the safest airline in the world. I owed that to the victims of Flight 722, to their families. I established a foundation in their names, providing financial support, scholarships, a lasting legacy of remembrance. Then, I received the intelligence I had been waiting for. Marcus. He was living in Singapore under an assumed name, a ghost in the bustling metropolis. He thought he was safe. He thought he had escaped justice. He thought I had let him go. He was, as usual, wrong. I orchestrated a major international tech conference to be held in Singapore, a prestigious event with industry leaders, venture capitalists, a veritable who's who of the global tech scene, an event Marcus, desperate to rebuild his shattered career, to crawl his way back into the world he had been so violently ejected from, wouldn't be able to resist. As predicted, he took the bait. He registered for the conference, using his false identity, no doubt dreaming of a triumphant return, a chance to reinvent himself. And, as I had also predicted, he booked his flight back to the U.S. on Aurora Airlines. My airline. His booking confirmation pinged on my private server. I reviewed it personally, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. Marcus Thorne, Seat 17B, Flight AA 722. How wonderfully poetically appropriate. I picked up my secure line. Zara, I said, we have a special passenger on Flight AA 722 from Singapore, Marcus Thorne. I need you to ensure he receives special handling. Consider it done, Miss Blackwood, Zara replied, her voice laced with a hint of relish. The trap was set. The bait was taken. The final act of my long, patient revenge was about to begin. And Marcus, blissfully unaware, was flying straight into the heart of the storm. His own personal, custom-designed storm, and so here we are. Back in my private hangar, the hum of the jet engines a symphony of impending retribution. The digital screen still shows Marcus at JFK, his face a mask of apoplectic rage. His flight, AA 722 from Singapore, had of course been canceled. Unforeseen operational issues, the official announcement had declared. A lie, of course, a beautiful, carefully crafted lie. His backup options, as Zara had so efficiently ensured, had also mysteriously evaporated. Every other flight to his desired destination was inexplicably full. His credit cards, both personal and corporate, were inexplicably declined. Even the airport hotels I had arranged were fully booked. He was stranded, helpless, at the mercy of an indifferent system. Just as I had been all those years ago, the irony was delicious. My phone rang. Caller ID, Marcus Thorne. I let it ring for a moment, savoring the anticipation. Then I answered, my voice a carefully constructed blend of sympathy and concern. Mia, thank God. You won't believe what's happening. My flight, it's canceled, and I can't get another one. Everything's booked. My cards, they're not working. I'm stranded, Mia. Stranded. His voice was a desperate, whining plea. The arrogant, condescending Marcus was gone, replaced by a pathetic, sniveling wreck. Oh, Marcus, that's terrible, I said, injecting a note of shocked dismay into my voice. Where are you, JFK? Don't worry, I'll help you. Of course I'll help you. He babbled his gratitude, his relief palpable even through the phone line. He still didn't suspect. He still thought I was his naive, easily manipulated cousin. He had no idea he was talking to the architect of his misery. I'll send my private jet for you, Marcus, I said, my voice dripping with false magnanimity. It'll be there in an hour. Just sit tight. I'll take care of everything. I hung up, a cold, triumphant smile spreading across my face. I turned to my chief pilot, a stoic, ex-military man whose loyalty was absolute. Captain Miller, I said, my voice now hard, devoid of any pretense. You'll be flying to JFK to pick up a passenger, a Mr. Marcus Thorne, your flight path. I have a very specific route in mind. I handed him a flight plan. He glanced at it, his eyebrows rising almost imperceptibly. It was the exact same route as the fatal flight 722. Every waypoint, every altitude, every sickening turn. Understood, Miss Blackwood, he said, his voice impassive. I nodded. Good. I walked towards my own plane, a sleek, powerful Gulfstream G650. It was time. Time to close the loop. Time for Marcus to face his demons. Time for him to experience firsthand the terror he had inflicted upon me, upon so many others. As I boarded the jet, I glanced back at the hangar. The digital screen was now blank. Marcus was no longer visible. But I could almost feel his fear, his desperation, his dawning realization that something was terribly, terribly wrong. He had taken my seat once, and it had nearly cost me my life. Now I was giving him a seat on a flight he would never forget. A flight into the heart of his own personal hell. And I would be there to greet him when he landed. If he landed. The engines roared to life, the jet began to taxi. My revenge, 5 years in the making, was finally taking flight. The private lounge at JFK was an oasis of calm amidst the airport's usual chaos. Plush leather chairs, hushed conversations, the clinking of ice in expensive scotch. Marcus sat hunched in a corner, looking disheveled and defeated. When he saw me enter, a wave of relief washed over his face. He rushed towards me, his eyes wide with a desperate gratitude that was almost comical. Mia, oh, thank God you're here. I don't know what I would have done. This whole day has been a nightmare. I smiled, a serene, knowing smile. I can only imagine, Marcus. I led him to a secluded alcove, poured him a generous drink, which he gulped down like a man dying of thirst. He babbled on about the canceled flights, the declined cards, the sheer incompetence of the airline staff. He was so wrapped up in his own self-pity, he didn't notice the subtle shift in my demeanor, the cold, calculating glint in my eyes. It's almost as if someone was deliberately trying to make your life difficult, isn't it, Marcus? I said, my voice soft, almost a purr. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. What do you mean? Oh, I said, swirling the amber liquid in my own glass. Canceling your flight on Aurora Airlines, for instance. An airline I happen to have a controlling interest in. Did you know that, Marcus? His eyes widened, the color drained from his face. You? You own Aurora Airlines? Among other things, I said, my smile widening. Blackwood Industries, for example, my parents' company, the company you tried to steal. He stared at me, speechless, his mind struggling to process the implications. The pieces were starting to click into place, forming a horrifying, unbelievable picture. And your parents, Marcus, I continued, my voice now laced with a chilling calm. Such a tragedy, their car accident. Brake failure, wasn't it? So unfortunate. Especially since I have concrete evidence, a sworn confession, in fact, that you orchestrated the whole thing. The glass slipped from his nerveless fingers, shattering on the marble floor. He looked at me, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. No, it's not true. You're lying. Am I, Marcus? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. Do you remember Flight 722? The one you so kindly gave me your seat on? The one that crashed into the Atlantic? I remember it, Marcus. I remember every horrifying second. I remember dying, and then I remember waking up. A second chance, Marcus. A chance to right the wrongs. A chance to make you pay. He broke then. Completely. The arrogant facade crumbled, revealing the pathetic, cowardly creature beneath. He sobbed. He pleaded. He begged for forgiveness. He even tried to threaten me, a last, desperate flicker of his former self. It was all quite pathetic. You can't do this to me, Mia. I'm your cousin. We're family. Family? I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You stopped being family the moment you decided my life, my parents' lives, were worth less than your ambition. As if on cue, the doors to the lounge opened. Two uniformed police officers, accompanied by James Chen, my lawyer, stepped inside. Marcus Thorne, one of the officers said, his voice firm and impersonal. You're under arrest for the murders of Thomas and Elizabeth Blackwood. Marcus stared at them, then at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning, terrible understanding. It was over. The game was up. There would be no escape this time. As they led him away, a sobbing, incoherent wreck, he looked back at me one last time. His face was a mixture of hatred, fear, and a grudging, horrified respect. He finally understood. He had underestimated me. He had underestimated the depths of my pain, the strength of my resolve. He had underestimated the power of a woman reborn. Watching Marcus being led away, a broken, defeated man, I should have felt a sense of triumph, victory, closure. But instead, a strange, unsettling emptiness washed over me. The culmination of 5 years of meticulous planning, of burning rage, of an all-consuming desire for revenge. And now, it was done. What was left? A memory flickered in my mind, unbidden. My dying moments in the original timeline. The chaos, the terror, yes. But also, strangely, a sense of peace. A letting go. A surrender to the inevitable. Had I traded that peace for this? For this cold, hollow victory? The past 5 years had been a whirlwind. Rebuilding Blackwood Industries, transforming it into a global powerhouse. Plotting Marcus's downfall, weaving an intricate web of deception and retribution. I had been so focused on the what, on the how, that I hadn't stopped to consider the why. What did I truly want? Justice? Revenge? Or something more? Something else? My phone buzzed. James Chen. Mia, he said, his voice crisp and professional. Marcus is caving. He's offering a full confession, pleading guilty to all charges. In exchange, he's asking for a recommendation of leniency. Life in prison instead of the alternative. Leniency. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. After everything he had done? After the lives he had destroyed? Did he deserve leniency? Did he deserve any less than the maximum punishment the law allowed? But then, what would that accomplish? Would it bring my parents back? Would it erase the scars of the crash? The years I had lost in a coma? Would it give me peace? I found myself drawn to the Flight 722 memorial, a stark, poignant tribute to the lives lost on that fateful day. Names etched in cold, hard granite. Each one a story cut short, a future stolen. My name could have been among them, should have been among them. I traced the letters of a stranger's name, a young woman, an aspiring artist, her dreams drowned in the icy Atlantic. What would she have wanted? What would my parents have wanted? Revenge had been my fuel, my driving force for so long. It had given me purpose, a reason to keep fighting, to keep pushing forward, but now it felt like a heavy cloak suffocating me, weighing me down. I thought of my rebirth, my second chance. Was it just about settling scores? Or was it about something more, something meaningful? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, the salty air filling my lungs. The decision, when it came, was surprisingly clear. It wasn't about Marcus anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about me, about healing, about finding a way to move forward, to build a future free from the shadows of the past. I called James. "Tell the DA we'll accept the plea," I said, my voice firm, resolute. "Let him rot in prison for the rest of his miserable life. But no more energy from me will be spent on him. It's time for me to live." The choice was made. The cycle was broken. It was time for Mia Blackwood to finally, truly begin her second life. The roar of the jet engines was no longer a trigger for panic, but a familiar, almost comforting sound. Aurora Airlines, under my leadership, had undergone a radical transformation. It was now, officially, the safest airline in the industry. State-of-the-art technology, rigorous training protocols, a culture of transparency and accountability. We had set a new standard, a benchmark for others to aspire to. The Flight 722 Foundation was thriving, providing support and solace to families affected by air tragedies, not just our own. We funded research into aviation safety, scholarships for aspiring pilots and engineers, and grief counseling services. It was a way to honor the past, to create something positive from the ashes of tragedy. Marcus was where he belonged, rotting in a maximum security prison, stripped of his name, his wealth, his power. A forgotten relic of a past I was determined to leave behind. His confession had ensured he would never see the outside world again. Justice, in its own way, had been served. He was exiled from my life, his memory a fading stain. Sometimes reports of his miserable existence would filter through, a grim satisfaction. But mostly, he was a non-entity. And me, I was finally taking a flight. Not for business, not for revenge. For myself. A simple vacation, a chance to breathe, to explore, to just be. As the plane soared through the clouds, I felt a sense of lightness, of liberation, that I hadn't experienced in years. The fear, the trauma, they were still there, a faint echo in the recesses of my mind. But they no longer controlled me. I had a moment of clarity then, gazing out at the endless expanse of blue. My rebirth, my second chance, it hadn't been just about revenge. That had been a necessary cathartic chapter, a purging of the poison that had infected my life. But it wasn't the whole story. It was about creating something meaningful, something lasting. It was about using the knowledge, the power, the resources I had been given to make a difference, however small. I pulled out my tablet, reviewing the latest designs for a new generation of aircraft safety features. A project I was personally spearheading at Blackwood Industries in collaboration with Aurora. A safer, more intuitive emergency oxygen system, reinforced cabin structures, AI-powered early warning systems. Innovations that could save lives, prevent future tragedies. I looked out the airplane window again. My reflection, superimposed against the backdrop of billowing white clouds, seemed to shimmer, to merge. The Mia of the past, the victim, the survivor, and the Mia of the future, the leader, the innovator, the healer. Two selves, finally, at peace. My second life hadn't been a gift I'd asked for, but it was a gift nonetheless, and I was determined to make the most of it. Not just for myself, but for all those who hadn't been so lucky. The journey was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. And for the first time in a very long time, I looked towards the horizon with a sense of hope, of purpose, of quiet, determined optimism. I was Mia Blackwood, and I was finally free.